Hi, this is Michael William Denny of the ThunderWizard.com YouTube channel. So I realize again I'm coming on last minute, so people may need some time to log on and see what's going on. But this is also going to be recorded, and so for those of you who are watching it after it's been recorded, I can go ahead and just get started. So what I want to talk to you about today is really one of the most fundamental themes of my teaching, which has to do with what is the actual nature of our connection to altered states of consciousness, to altered states of awareness, to what is the nature of the soul? What is the nature of the soul in connection to the universe? But more specifically, what is the difference between our experience while we are in the body and our experience when we are not in the body? And we're going to get to a lot of the main things that I've been teaching. And, listen, I teach a lot of specific techniques that you can use, meditations, rituals, mantra, mindset, how to optimize your life, how to achieve ascension in your life. But really, there's one very simple thing that is the most important, that if you don't fully understand, you cannot take advantage of your ideal potential, your unlimited potential. Having said that, even though it is very simple, it often takes a lifetime or lifetimes of experience for us to understand that. So we're going to be talking about that today. While I'm waiting for more people to show up, there's nobody on at the moment. So while I'm waiting for people to show up, I'm just going to go ahead and share with you my background. A lot of you may know some of my history and what I've been through. A lot of you may not. There's a lot of new people on the channel, and so I want to share with you some of my experiences just to qualify that I'm not only talking from theory, I'm talking from experience. And this is a big deal for me because experience is really more important than intellectual understanding. This is the difference between religion versus experiential spirituality. This is why I teach so many techniques like meditation and ritual and Vedic, why I give Vedic astrological readings, because these are all focused on your practical lives. All of the talk in the world means nothing if you can't apply it. And so one of my missions has been to take a lot of this spiritual information and give it to you in a way so that you can apply it in your life. So I want to get started with that. So it looks like there's at least one or two people, one other person besides me may be on right now. So I'm going to go ahead and get started and share with you my background. As a kid, we'll go back even further than that. When I was born premature. And we're not really sure, at least I haven't got a straight answer as to exactly how premature I was, but it was quite premature. It was at least 4 weeks. It could have been 6 weeks. It might have even been more than that, but it was pretty significant. It was so significant that when I was born, the doctors were convinced I wouldn't survive. And so they told my mother and my father, he's probably not going to live through the night. You should just know that. And according to my mother, she says that she prayed, and of course she was a Christian, a fundamentalist Christian, and she prayed and asked that God would allow me to survive only if I could be completely healthy. And according to her, she got a response. She got a response, and she believes that God told her that he would answer her prayer on one condition, and that was, you give him to me, and you stay out of it. You stay out of my relationship with him. I don't know how well she did that, but anyways, that's the story according to my mother. The other aspect of it was that, way back then, I mean, I don't know what goes on now with premature babies, but back then they didn't really know what to do. They did the exact opposite of what you should do. They put you in this cubicle all by yourself, and they pumped in a bunch of oxygen. And so they were doing that. They were pumping, fresh oxygen into this little, fish bowl that they had put me in. And according to the doctors, they felt they had to keep pumping in this oxygen, but there was a chance that I would go blind as a result. So again, they came to my parents and they said, well, we're doing this to keep him alive, but you have to make the decision. Do you want him to be blind or do you want him to live? And so they decided, or do you want him to be able to see? But if we turn down the oxygen, he may die. So again, they made the decision that they were going to allow me to live without being blind. So they said, turn it down. If he dies, he dies. It's better that he live and be. We want him to live and be fully healthy. So I'm appreciative of my parents for that. In any case, as you can see, I'm well. I'm 53 years old, so obviously I didn't have any major health issues, and I can see. Although I need glasses to see far away, that has nothing to do with anything else. So, according to my parents, the legend is that from the beginning I was special. Now, my experience as a kid growing up is that from a very early age, I had experiences that didn't seem strange to me. But looking back on it now, it doesn't seem to be as normal, I guess, for a lot of other, toddlers. I had experiences where, like a lot of toddlers, I had experiences with beings and entities and all that, communicating with things that I thought were there that other people didn't see. Who knows how much of that is just toddler imagination or I was really having an experience. But I do remember that I had thoughts that were unusual looking back on it now, which was that I always had this awareness that I was infinite. And I had this awareness that I was eternal. And that seemed totally normal to me. And I remember I remember being 4 years old. One of the first memories I can remember is that I was staring off, into the distance, thinking to myself, I'm going to live forever. Now, I wasn't saying that I was going to physically live forever. I wasn't even thinking about my physical body. I was just thinking about my essence. It just seemed to me a self-evident truth that, I'm infinite. And so by extension, so is everybody else. I also remember having the feeling at 4 years old, thinking that I am everybody else. And so if I do something that's harmful to other people, that's going to be harmful to me. And I don't want to hurt me. So I'm going to always be sure that I act in ways towards other people that make them feel good because I want to feel good. So again, to me, that seemed very normal and very logical looking back on it. Maybe that's not the experience. Some people have come to me and said most people don't think like that. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But definitely not everybody has that awareness. So what this brings me back to again is we're talking about the nature of the soul. I am still a human being. I am still imperfect. And I still have a lot of learning to do. I don't know how many more lifetimes I have left in this body. I'm not even going to try and make that decision or, whether or not I have more lifetimes to come or not. It doesn't really matter. Because again, going back to the nature of the soul is infinite and eternal, and the soul is always learning and growing, so it doesn't matter. If I don't come back in this body, I'm going to have another experience that will be filled with experiences and challenges and learning, and who's to say which one is going to be more pleasant or beneficial? I don't know. So the bottom line of this is that I have, since I can remember, this has been my focus in life. And then as, of course, I've gotten older, I've gone through all of the life challenges that everybody goes through. I've gone through my own spiritual doubts and darkness and challenges. And, of course, my Beliefs have changed drastically multiple times. My beliefs are continuously changing all the time. And so I'm coming back now, as I'm entering my 50s, I'm coming back now to some of those first awarenesses that I had as a kid. And all of my spiritual experiences, whether in the body or out of the body, have all pointed to those first memories that I have, which is that I am eternal and I am infinite. And the more that I once again embrace this idea that I am eternal and I am infinite, the more success that I have in my life. So I do see here we've got, 5 people? We've got a few people that are starting to show up. So I will be taking questions, so feel free to post them on there. If I get into a tangent, I may not look at your question until I've, gotten my thought out. But I do want to take some questions from people if they have them. If I don't get to your question, it may be because it may not be pertinent to what I'm talking about. Don't take it personally. Some people get so offended, why didn't you answer my question? It's just, I only have so much RAM in my brain and I can only focus on so much at one time. So if it's something that I feel stimulated and inspired to share about, I may share about it. I may not have the answer, and in which case I won't answer the question. So anyway, so there's that. So let's get back to what the point of all this is. What does this have to do with exiting the matrix, out-of-body experiences, near-death experiences, altered states of consciousness? What does what I'm saying have to do with that? Well, what I want to do is I want to address what I believe to be a main driving force behind a lot of people's desire to experience spirituality. Now, I'm not judging it. It doesn't mean this is the only reason why people follow spirituality, but I think it's a main reason. I know it was for me for a long time, which is why I got involved in so many esoteric things, which is why I have, so many techniques and knowledge about ritual and how to access other realms of existence. And that driving force is the desire to get out of the body, to not be in the body anymore. And, when I get questions like, exiting the matrix, wanting to exit the matrix, what people are really saying is that they want out of this body. And they are experiencing pain, all different kinds of pain, loneliness, sadness, desperation, disconnection, whatever it is. They're experiencing some kind of pain. And again, I relate. I've experienced all of those things. I wouldn't wish a lot of the things I've gone through on anybody, but I know I'm not alone there. A lot of people have had some really painful experiences in this life. But that driving force to get out of the body has an assumption. And as you know, I keep telling you that if you really want to make progress in your spiritual path, you have to be willing to look at your assumptions. This is the biggest problem when it comes to religion and politics, because religion and politics are fueled with so much emotion that people can't look at things rationally. Now, I'm not going to even try, I'm going to do my best not to be specific, but let's just use politics as an example. What I find interesting is the exact same thing that people complain about, whoever the president is. Once the new president comes in, the other side has the exact same complaints. And you really, if you took, I hate President so-and-so because he blah, 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 if you just switch the names around and switch it by 4 years or 8 years, it's the exact same argument. So the question is, how is it that two sides that are so polar opposite from each other have such different views, have the exact same complaints? Because it comes down to, again, this idea of not being able to see things from a clear perspective. People have their emotional attachments. For instance, there are things this president does and says that if a different president, if Obama were to do and say the same things, those same people would be destroying it, would be calling for his head on a pike. So why is it that one person can get away with it but another person can't? Because we have this emotional attachment. And we have an emotional attachment to our unconscious assumptions. So this is where I'm getting at. When it comes to this idea that if we can just get out of the body, if I can just leave my body, I'll feel better. I'll be in true reality. That in this body I'm living in some kind of false reality. And if I can just get to the true reality, it will all be okay. I'll feel happy, I'll feel free, whatever it is. The assumption, we have to look at that. Is that assumption accurate? Let's bring in suicide. So a lot of religions call suicide a sin. And so why would suicide be a sin? Well, if you're a religious person, it's going to be, well, because God gave you life and you shouldn't kill yourself because then you're sinning against God and his creation. You have to just soldier on through the pain and carry your cross and all that. But what if it's something else? What if, because obviously people who commit suicide are operating from an assumption that if they can get out of this body, they won't be in pain anymore. But a lot of religions and spiritual teachings will say, the reality is if you commit suicide, whatever challenge that you were trying to escape, you are going to have to go through again in the next lifetime, only it's going to be worse. So then that creates, that destroys that assumption. So then we're left back to this idea of we are infinite and we are immortal. And as you know, with the teachings that I teach about weird, which is the pre-Christian European idea of fate, is that weird operates from the idea that there's only the present moment. That's the only thing that exists, is the present moment. And each tiny millisecond that passes by we are recreating ourselves in the now. And every action, every thought, every belief, every assumption, everything that we do, whether it be mental, emotional, spiritual, or physical, creates a pattern that gets stuck in the past. Because it's happened, because the moment passes, it's always passing. My ancestors called it the ever-present moment, the ever-unfolding now. So there never really is a past. It's just always the now. But every time that you think something, you feel something, you create this pattern which gets lodged into the past. And then that pattern tells you, we refer back to the moment that we just experienced to tell us who we are, whether we're happy, sad, whatever it is. And then that past moment creates a debt in the future, which we have to pay for. So if we're looking at it that way, then every thing that happens in our life, positive or negative, is a result of something that has happened in the ever unfolding now. And so the answer to both our past and our future is in the now. This goes to, when I share things on my YouTube channel, like I just recently shared a very powerful technique called the spell of the 9 nuts. And I talk about it on the YouTube channel, and then I actually teach exactly how to do it on both a DVD and in the Master Shamanism class on the Patreon site that I have. And people want to know. I get people emailing me, want to know how to do blah, 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 blah. And I already know some of these people that technique, as great as it is meaningless if you don't have the ability right now to change your attitude, as long as you come from the attitude that you are at a disadvantage, that you are a victim, that things are happening to you, as long as you operate from that assumption, you're continuously creating the past pattern that keeps telling you that. And so with that, even if you take that understanding, and I give you an incredibly powerful tool, if you still think that you're a victim, that tool may help you, it may not, but you're definitely not going to get out of it what you potentially could. So even this idea, you know, all of these things, all of these tools that I provide are ultimately here so that you can get over any disbelief that you have. So even the belief that if I just had that, if I could have that teaching, I would be okay. Can you please teach me for free? I'll do anything. As long as you operate from that idea, you're never going to have what you're looking for. You have to have it now. So then that comes to the question of, well, what, you know, I mean, you can't necessarily turn your feelings off. So I'm not talking about you have to change your feelings. You have to change your assumptions and your beliefs and your attitudes and your actions. And you can do all of those things regardless of how you feel. Because emotional feelings are, again, a result of us responding to that pattern that we tell ourselves. You know, if you tell yourself enough times you're a victim and you hold that, you know, that victimization idea, then what ends up happening is that no matter what, you're going to have that feeling of being victimized. You're going to have pain, you're going to have sadness, hopelessness, and all of that. So the first thing, I guess if there's one thing that I can teach, the first thing is to change your assumption. Your assumption, just adopt the assumption that you are infinite and that you are immortal and that you are omnipotent. Just adopt that assumption. Now that doesn't have to change how you feel. I'm not trying to tell you to go into denial. I'm just saying that you can have a different assumption than how you're feeling. Just know that the feelings that keep coming to you based on the patterns that you've created are something that's from the past. It's not from the present. It's sort of like, you know, when seasons change. I mean, that's all changing too now. All our seasons. I mean, now I could get into that, the whole global warming thing. But, you know, seasons, when you pass through, let's say, winter and enter the spring, or when you pass through the solstices, right? Like the winter solstice. Well, winter hasn't fully hit by the time the winter solstice comes. Usually the coldest days come after the winter solstice. So even though the sun is starting to climb into the sky earlier and the Earth's rotation is shifting so that we get more of the sun, we're not getting warmer, we're getting colder. So there's a delay effect. Same thing is true with your emotions. Your emotions are responding to thoughts and patterns that you acted on previously. So you may still have sadness and pain and hopelessness and depression and all of that, even though you adopt the new assumption. Okay, so that's important. It doesn't have to feel good. I want you to feel good. I think you should do everything in your power, including you know, going and seeing counselors and therapists and doing things you know you need to do and taking actions. You know, do whatever you need to do to feel good. But just know you don't have to feel good to be operating from an accurate assumption about yourself. Okay? So once you've got that accurate assumption going, then you acknowledge your feelings. You do acknowledge them. I'm not saying go into denial. Acknowledge all of your feelings. Have them. And know that there is a difference between your assumption and your feelings. Eventually, once you continue to take actions connected to your assumption, not on your feeling, but on your assumption that you are infinite, that you are eternal, that you're omnipotent, when you take actions on that continuously, then what ends up happening is you start creating new past moments that you then refer to, which dictate to you how you feel. And eventually then your feelings will come into alignment with this new assumption. This is the main lesson of life. The main lesson of life is that you are what you project. You know, like The Secret. The only difference between what I'm saying and what The Secret is saying is that The Secret is trying to, what people want to get out of The Secret is that if you focus on money, you'll be rich. And again, the assumption is if you're rich, you'll be happy. And all I have to do is, I can pick one person, Michael Jackson. The richest, most famous, most talented, most respected, most prolific, you know, artist, and at least one of them in our modern history. And he was so unhappy, he was so miserable that the same medication that doctors use to put you out on the operating table, he was being injected with, and he was still awake. He wouldn't even fall asleep. Can you imagine how unhappy he must have been for that medication not to have an effect on him? So obviously money isn't going to give you what it is, you know, if I just have enough money, it'll all be okay. I know there are people out there, maybe not right now, but maybe eventually will listen to this, that you think that if you can just get enough money, you'll be able to fix all the problems in your life. No. I mean, look, I have nothing against having money. I work for a living so that I can have money, so that I can do the things that I want to do, so that I can enjoy my life. But I also know that that's not going to give me what it is I truly, deeply want. So what I'm saying here is that out-of-body experiences, altered states of consciousness, near-death experiences, none of these things are going to change the fact that you are infinite and eternal and omnipotent. So the assumption that if I can have an out-of-body experience, if I can learn how to do astral traveling, if I can learn how to do shamanic journeying, if I can exit the matrix, if I can just do that, I'll be okay, is a false assumption, because you will still be there. You know, wherever you go, there you are. And this is the whole reason for reincarnation. This is the whole reason for the underworld. The underworld is part of the universe so that the soul, you know, because the soul has to work through the false attachments that we have. And that's where all of our pain comes from. All of our pain comes from the idea that if I can just get this, I'll be happy. And then when we don't get it, we're unhappy. And again, I'm not minimizing that. You know, some people have tremendous amounts of pain that they go through in their life. So I'm not trying to minimize people's pain. But that's the whole reason for the underworld, is so that the soul can realize it's me. It's not any of those other things, it's me. And then when we get to the place where we finally, if you really want to talk about exiting the matrix, when we finally get to that awareness that there is nothing outside of us that will fix it, that all of the answers are within our own souls, then there's no need to come back. But once you get to that point, then you don't care whether you come back or not. So if you're listening to me right now and you want so badly not to come back into this life, I can guarantee you, you will. Because you haven't learned the lesson yet. I can't say that I've learned that. I have an awareness of it. I'm continuously working towards it. And I have accepted the reality that whether I stay in this body, whether I come back again in another body, or whether I move on to another plane of existence, whatever problems that I think I have are whatever I bring with me. And so, you know, that I may have to live with that for a few lifetimes, who knows. But that takes a lot of the pressure off. You know, the need to find the answer takes a huge amount of energy. So again, I'm coming back to how we feel in the moment. And that it's okay to be uncomfortable. It's okay to be in pain. It's okay to be depressed. It's okay to feel hopeless. It's okay to be scared. It's okay not to be happy. Those feelings will not prevent you from achieving your enlightenment, your freedom, your awareness. So to answer the question, how is it that you exit the matrix? You exit the matrix is you. And I can guarantee you that there are people in this world walking around who have exited the matrix. They're not in it anymore. They're not trapped by it. But you'll never know who they are. You know, you won't be able to see it. We can easily see the ones who are trapped. Anybody who's causing other people pain, anybody who's causing themselves pain are trapped. And so we can see that. But the ones who aren't trapped, you won't necessarily notice them. So, you know, all of the things that I teach are geared around doing that. Now, it is valuable when you have this awareness that you are everything and that you create everything. All of the things that I'm teaching, like the spell of the 9 knots, like the meditations, you know, the spirit fighting, all of the things that allow you to bend reality and allow you to manifest things, all of those experiences work better once you adopt this assumption. When you adopt this assumption that happiness is something only you can give yourself, fulfillment is only something you can give yourself, and that you have the power to create everything in your life. When you adopt that assumption and learn how to live that, then you'll actually get better at all those things. So again, there are people, you know, I get a lot of people who contact me who want me to teach them for free. And they'll give me long stories about how they can't afford, you know, I mean, I've even had people say they can't afford to buy a $10 book. You know, I remember one person wanted me to, this was a few years ago, but they wanted me to teach them, they wanted to be an apprentice. And I said, oh, okay, great. Well, start with this book. And they said, oh, I can't afford it. And I'm like, really? You can't afford a $10 book? You're typing on a computer. You know, how are you able to afford your cable bill? You know, I know that you're driving a car. How are you afford the gas? So if you're in that space of mind, it won't matter what I teach you, because you won't even have the ability to reach out. Here's another truth about the universe. That the universe is based on an exchange of energy. This is why in ritual we give offerings. And this is why our ancestors, you know, gave blood offerings, where they, you know, gave offerings of, animal sacrifices to the gods, which, by the way, people ate. You know, this is one thing people don't realize. Whenever there was an animal that was sacrificed, the people would then feast on that animal. So it wasn't, you know, we don't see it. I mean, people eat animals all the time now. We don't think of it that way. But back then, animals had a lot of value. You know, to have a sheep or a goat or a cow or a pig or whatever it was, that was money. The first money that was traded was animals. And that was a lot. And so when you sacrificed an animal, meaning, you know, that was, you know, potentially what we would look at as being thousands of dollars, you know, just thrown into the fire. And then you're going to share the meat of that animal with the rest of the village. You know, that's a big sacrifice. So there's always an exchange of energy. So whenever people come to me and they give me a sob story about how they want to train with me, but they can't afford it and they don't want to pay for it, then I know that they haven't understood the first understanding of the universe, which is the universe is based on an exchange of energy. There has to be an exchange of energy. And when it comes to exchanges of energy, again, this is something else that happens. People will come to me and they'll say, I want to trade with you. They don't ask me if I want to trade. They say, I want to trade with you. And then they tell me what they want to trade. And like it's okay. Don't worry. I figured it out. I have something that I want to trade with you, and here's what it is. Now give me what I want. Well, I mean, the whole idea of exchange of energy is that it has to be something that I'm lacking, and I may not need whatever it is you think that you have decided you want to trade with me. I do trade with people sometimes, but only if it's something that I need. But that's just mutual respect, right? It's an exchange of energy. So when you operate from those understandings, let's say you don't have the money to whatever it is that you want. If it's important enough to you, you will manifest a way to be able to pay for it. And so the learning begins before the learning begins. And so if you're stuck in a place where you can't even begin the learning, it's because you haven't learned or accepted the lesson that the universe is continuously trying to tell you. If you're one of those people like me, this has happened with me, where you're constantly bumping into not having enough money in life, it's the universe saying, listen, you've got to be willing to pay for things. What are you willing to do to get what you want? And when you learn that lesson, people who've gone through it, you know what I'm talking about. When you've learned the lesson that you are willing to do whatever it takes in order to find the resources to get what you want, then guess what happens? You get more resources. And the reason for that is because the universe sees that you get it. Because the universe has infinite amount of resources available to everybody at all times. Whether it be for healing, whether it be for knowledge, whether it be for whatever it is, there are infinite amounts of resources. And that's all everything is just an energetic resource. And when you understand that the universe will respond to you taking action based on an assumption. If you believe you're infinite, that you are everything and that everything is available to you, even if you don't have whatever it is you may need to get what you want, once you jump off that cliff and take the action, irreversible action that you can't take back, the universe says, they get it, give that person the resources. And then all of a sudden the resources appear. And then you're able to get what you want. And then you start to learn, oh, I don't have to wait. I can go after what my soul truly desires. And the universe will provide. I've done this in my life numerous times where I was literally a breath away from homelessness. And I went online, after I left my previous marriage and came back to California, I didn't have any money. I went online, I went on Craigslist, I saw a cabin that I wanted to live in. I didn't know how I was going to pay for it. Didn't know where the money was going to come from. I just knew that that's where I wanted. I took whatever money I had in, my racked up credit cards, and I online rented the cabin, drove all the way from Seattle all the way down to California. And within weeks, I was able to find a company that I could work with, and boom, all of a sudden I had more than enough money to pay the rent. That's how life works. So, getting back to this. Now, what if you're one of those people that doesn't make, you're not having success? You've been doing the meditations, you've been doing the whatever it is, and you're not having the success that you want in life. Then the same kind of thing is going on. There's some block within you. It may be that you aren't meant to go after what it is you're going after. It may be that, it is possible you might not have enough energy to manifest it. But it may be that you're operating from a false understanding. I see this a lot with people who have trouble with shamanic journeying. Shamanic journeying, if you try too hard, right? If you try and go into a shamanic state of mind and have a shamanic journey, and you're thinking too hard, it won't happen because your intellect is blocking you. So you have to have a measure of trust and a measure of release in order to have success with that. So anyway, I think I've kind of talked a lot about this subject. If you have any questions, we've only got 9 people on there right now. If you have any questions, go ahead and type them in and I'll answer them for you. While I'm waiting for questions to come up, because there is a delay here. For those of you who aren't familiar with it, I recommend that you go to the Master Shamanism course page. And I've added, by the way, I've added a new level in there, which is in between the 1 hour a week private sessions and then the 4 hours a week private sessions. I've added one in between, which is 2 hours per week. So for those of you who want to have private interaction with me, and 1 is not enough, but 4 is too many, now you can have 2. So that I'll put a link down here in the description when I'm all done with this, so you can find it. But it's patreon.com, patreon.com/Thunder Wizard. And if you go there, you can see all the things that we're doing there. While I'm on the subject, I don't see any questions coming up yet. While I'm on the subject, oh, I do see one question. I'll get to it in a second. While I'm on the subject of that, I forgot what I was going to say. So I guess I'll just go ahead and answer your question. All right. Renee asks, what is the Vedic equivalent of Freja? And please recommend a good chant or runes. This is something that if you look into my videos that I've done, learning how to use channels is good. I mean, YouTube is very hard. It's constantly trying to distract you. But if you can find somebody's actual channel page, you can search in their channel for videos. So if you just go on there and type Freya, I don't know if I use the J or not. Type Freya in there. You'll see something come up. But the equivalent is exactly the same. So the term Freja comes from the same root word that the Vedic has, which is called praja. Now the Vedics, by the time they wrote down the Vedas, their understanding of that power, which means fertility, they were worshiping a deity called Prajapati. Pati means lord or husband. Praja means the power of fertility, the power of expansion, the power of creation. Pra, the word that we have for, toward, for, comes from that same root of pra. So you have pra, and then you have ja. Praja means the power, or the feminine power, the expressive power, the shakti of pra. Praja pati. So if we just take the word praja, then all we have to do is just simply slightly change the pronunciation into the Germanic dialect of Indo-European, where P's become F's and J's become Y's. So praja becomes freja or freya. It's the same word. So you ask, what is the Vedic equivalent? It's exactly the same. Praja and Freja are just 2 pronunciations of the exact same energy. Now we have Frey. Frey is simply the Germanic pronunciation of Pra. P-R-A. Pra. Pra is expansion, is fertility, is, the energy comes in and expands like an egg. This is the creation. This is why Frey and Freja are the gods of fertility. So now you understand, pra and praja are not 2 separate things. They're the same thing. One is the concept, and the other is the energy. You can't have one without the other. This is why Frey and Freja are brother and sister, and husband and wife. So it's one of the only times I know of where you have, a couple which is husband and wife and brother and sister. And at the same time, they're just one unit. They're the same thing. So if you want the feminine aspect, the creative aspect of fertility, you worship Freja. If you want to focus on the masculine idea, the focus of it, then you worship Frey. This is interesting because while we're on the subject, since Frey, if you've ever seen any of the traditional idols of Frey, he's sitting in full lotus with a fully erect phallus. What that means is that he is the power of fertility. But in that expression, he is not releasing his energy. He is actually meditating. He's empowering it. So when you want power connected to Kundalini, connected to meditation, connected to how to keep your life force energy and empower yourself with it, you worship Frey. Frey has that power because he is, he's got this fully erect phallus, but he's not doing anything with it. He's ready to go. He's fully prepared. He's completely connected to his fertility ability to fertilize and create, but he's still in this act of empowering himself. Whereas Freja it takes that energy and uses it to create the dynamic aspect of it. So that was my question. Are there allies in exiting the matrix? I'm not quite sure I understand all of that. They are all allies in exiting the matrix. Okay, I'm not sure that's a question, but I'm into that. Somebody wrote here, blood over intent. I don't know if that's a question or not. Are you asking me about blood over intent? I've talked about blood over intent in depth. What I agree with when it comes to blood over intent is that I believe in the practice of blood sacrifice. Because as I said, the universe operates on an exchange of energy. So specifically blood over intent, writing that intent of, I am at peace with, and I worship all things, and you're going to use your blood to do that in order to change your reality, I am fully in agreement with. And I've said that I think that it's anybody who does that and operates from a positive assumption that they have the ability to create their heaven on earth reality. I don't really care what their belief system is. I don't believe in a flat earth. I don't believe in that we're trapped. I don't believe in any of that negative stuff. But, here's the thing about that. Negative beliefs, people who are fighting to get out of the matrix, are people who are aware that there is more, that they can be more. Just because I think that their assumptions are limiting and inaccurate doesn't change what is truly powerful about it, which is the willingness to take action to have everything, which means that even if you believe that something outside of you is trapping you and keeping you from being somewhere, as inaccurate as I think that is, they're this close to realizing that they are the ones who are trapping themselves. And so it's still the same. You still have to fight to break through being trapped. And if you are successful, you will get to the other side and you'll go, oh, I was doing it to myself this whole time. But until you know, you don't know. You only know what you know. And so I support, in essence, where they're going, because they sense that there's something more that they have a right to have. And so if they operate from that and they continue to operate from that awareness, and are willing to let go of their own self-imposed limitations, then something like blood over intent can be very powerful. But like anything, just like meditation or, ritual or anything, again, we could talk about superpowers, which I've experienced, and there's a trap in that as well, which is then once you get the power, then you can still stay trapped. So it's not a be-all, end-all, but I definitely think like anything else, it is a tool that can give you ultimate liberation if that's what you want. Suggestions with dealing with elf shot. Well, if you and I are on the same understanding that elf shot is illness, physical illness, then it comes back to the same thing. This is something I've written books about, which is the shamanic secret commandment to a perfect life. I talk about this in the book I wrote about the shamanic secret to healing cancer. But it all comes back to the same thing, which is if we're talking about physical illness, whether it's as a result of demon possession or who knows what it is, it doesn't change the underlying true assumption, which is that any limitation that you experience, whether it be physical or otherwise, is your own creation. So even if it is elf shot, meaning that a spirit, that's what they mean, a spirit has caused you illness, that can only happen if you yourself allow that to happen. It means that there's something within you. Even if we go under the assumption that a spirit has attacked you, a spirit can only attack you if you have something that you are trying to avoid looking at with yourself. So all illness is a distraction from you going after your true purpose in life. Here is the main obstacle, the main challenge in life. We are all put into this body with a soul desire, which is something that we brought with us before we incarnated. When we were in the underworld and we were thinking about this next life, or if this is your first life and you're in Asgard and you're about to be dropped into this life for the first time, then you have the soul, and your soul has a desire to fulfill, and it's going to be a challenging thing, but it will also be the most empowering and the most fulfilling thing you've ever done. The way life is set up is that your ego, your limitations, are going to put blockades in front of you which will make it difficult or fearful for you to go after them. And let me give you an example. This is one of the biggest ways that this happens. Let's say somebody grows up in a house filled with, financial consultants, somebody who deals with big finance, right? And they have somebody who grows up who wants to be a philosopher or an artist or a musician. And that is their deepest soul desire. They have a soul desire to do those things, but the parents want you to follow in the family business. And so then that person has to ask themselves, do I want the love of my parents, or do I want to follow my deepest desire? And the difficult part is that when we go against what we think society wants for us, it feels like we're killing them. And so out of a feeling of guilt, not wanting to kill your parents on an emotional level, obviously you're not thinking that consciously, this is all happening on an emotional level, you knuckle under and you do what you think they want you to do, and then you end up miserable, and then you pass it on to your kids. That can make people be incredibly ill. They can get cancer, they can get heart disease, they can get emotional difficulties, mental problems. That's the result of self-directed anger. You're angry at yourself for not following your deepest desire. If you can understand that, and I know it's not necessarily an easy thing to accept, it's because the brain works so hard to distract us from that. But if you can accept that, then you can cure yourself. I did it. I cured myself of all kinds of so-called incurable illnesses that I had. If you were to talk to me 10, 15 years ago, I would have told you how sick I was. And I have none of those issues now. And I shared about that in my book. So that's the long answer to elf shot. You're responsible for everything. See, what else do we got here? To clarify, the gods and goddesses are our allies. Thank you. I would agree with that. Let's see, what else? Do I have any other questions? Okay, we may have run out of questions here, so is there any more? All right, so if you have any more questions, go ahead and drop them in there. Now I remember what I wanted to talk about in terms of the Patreon page. So the Master Shamanism class is evolving. And I want to share with you my vision of where I want this to go. Right now, the Patreon class, the Master Shamanism subscription class, is for people who are following this channel, who want to have in-depth instruction. Now, I used to only do this in apprenticeship. An apprenticeship was I would talk with somebody for, or meet with them for 1 hour a week. So you get 4 private sessions with me, and I would work individually with each person. I would first look at their Vedic astrological chart to see what, deities and energies. I would look at past life stuff and karma and all, and how they can create the most powerful rituals for themselves. And then I would work with them individually. But there was a lot of people who either didn't have the time or didn't have the resources or didn't know me well enough to get into that kind of an intense relationship. So I created the Patreon page so that I could put on hour-long teachings, because I also realized that I was fine-tuning my teaching to such a personalized connection that I wasn't really teaching people a lot of essentials, of the basics. So we're starting all over from the beginning, and we're right now going through the foundations of true shamanism as I see it, which is a syncretic view of multiple traditions. So the great thing about it is that, I've spent 25 years in multiple deeply esoteric spiritual traditions that you can't get unless you're invited to, and you're not allowed to share, things like that. They'll come after you if you share it in public and that kind of thing. But since I've worked with so many different ones, I've found the truths that work. Again, the practical things that work. So I'm teaching from the ground up how to function that way, what real shamanism is, practical shamanism, which includes witchcraft and astrology and manifestation and meditation and energy work and all that other stuff, ritual and worship and all that. But eventually where we're going is that once we get enough people who have learned the fundamentals, then I'm going to start giving people certifications. So, once you get certified in the basics, then you'll be able to teach the basics of this system. And then we're going to move into more and more specialized. So people can decide how far they want to go. Maybe just the foundation is enough for them and that's all they want and need. Some people are going to want to go deeper and learn more specialization. And eventually we're going to get you to the place where you know which one of the 9 worlds, or which of the 9 worlds you resonate the most, and which beings and which entities you want to work with the most, and which abilities you have. Are you a healer? Are you a spiritual warrior? Are you a teacher? Are you a philosopher? Are you, there's so many ways that we could go. And then you're going to then take this information, and together you and I are going to create a path for you. So eventually there are going to be multiple levels of certification, and I want this to grow. I have no interest in holding on to this or controlling it. I am simply a vehicle. And there are people who have said to me, and I'm agreeing with them, that this particular kind of syncretic shamanism, I may be the only person who has all of this knowledge in this way. And I think it's important that what I give is that people build on it. So my goal isn't to create something about me. It's about putting out a template, and I will fill in the basics. And then you take it from there. And after I'm gone, hopefully in 100 years or 500 years, it will have taken off and it's created its own tradition. I'm getting ahead of myself. But that's where I want to go with all of this. So I recommend people look into that, because I think not only do I think that you'll learn a lot, but I think it's something beneficial. I want to create a community where there are people who can take these things and go off into their own little groups, in their own little niches, and work with each other and train with each other and find out and experiment, through trial and error, what works and what doesn't, and expand on this knowledge and become experts in things that, people haven't for thousands of years, or maybe ever. So that's my goal for where I want this to go. Let's see. Last question I'll take, because we've hit an hour. Renee has asked, is it possible to get into spiritual warfare when meditating? I was approached by a spirit during meditation, and it was a Christian spirit. Well, you're asking two questions. First one, is it possible to get into spiritual warfare when meditating? Yeah. But, again, any kind of spiritual warfare is the result of, something you have, whatever that demon represents. If it's a demon, then it's something within you that you need to overcome. But yes, it is possible. You were approached by a spirit, and it was a Christian spirit. Well, Saint Michael. The thing, even though I personally am not a Christian, and even though I think the Bible has all kinds of problems and, doesn't represent true spirituality, that doesn't mean that there aren't entities out there that are identified. Even Jesus. I had a vision of Jesus, a couple of visions of Jesus when I was a Christian, and I'm not a Christian anymore. So do I know for a fact that there's an entity out there named Jesus that somebody can have an experience with? Absolutely. Does it mean that Christianity is true? No. So, having an experience with Saint Michael the Archangel means that you have a destiny with spiritual warfare, because that's what Saint Michael is. I feel a strong connection to Saint Michael in that way. So you can still have that, and you can still benefit from connecting with entities from all religions, as long as you understand that you don't necessarily have to adopt that religion, but it means that at the very least you have something left to do. All right, let's see. With all the information linking most spiritual paths to Hermetic teachings, is there a connection between Norse and Hermetics? Well, that's an assumption. All the information linking most spiritual paths to Hermetic teachings, that's an assumption that I don't necessarily agree with. There is a lot of information linking spiritual paths to Hermetic teachings, or more specifically, Hermetic teachings have ideas and concepts that are commonly found in a lot of different understandings. So I'm going to disagree with your assumption. Hermeticism is not the basis from which Norse religion evolved. Absolutely not. Norse religion is an outcropping of pre-Christian Indo-European teachings. In fact, Norse religion has more in common with Vedic and Hindu than it does with Hermeticism. Hermeticism is a very specific philosophical take on religion in general. So I don't agree with that, but that doesn't mean that you can't, if you're drawn to Hermeticism, that doesn't mean that you can't take that Hermetic bent of yours and look for the similarities in other religions. You can be a Norse Hermeticist if you want. But I think it's important, this is a very modern idea, and this is found in Christianity and in Buddhism. Buddhism does this a lot. Oh, everything is the Buddha. Everything is Buddhism. You find it in even Hare Krishnas do the same thing. Oh, everything is Krishna. No, you just happen to be aligned with Krishna, so you see Krishna everywhere. That's okay. But don't come to me and tell me that Odin is Krishna. You know what I mean? So same thing with you. If you want to be a Hermeticist in other religions, go for it. But understand that that's your take, that's your bent, that's what works for you. And so you can find the Hermetic truths within it without having to then say, oh, everything is based on Hermeticism. So anyway. All right, so that's it. We're past an hour. I think I've done my spiel. I've done my own, I've given my own, what do you call it? Advertisements for myself. Please, if you haven't already, like and subscribe, and share these videos. It's really helpful for me if you take these videos and go onto Twitter and Facebook, and I don't even know what's out there. MySpace, what else is out there? The other there's so many other other social media places out there, and post these links. Go on to forums and post these links, because the more people that come to this channel, the more successful I'm going to be, because this is my business. This is what I do for a living. So the more people that come onto this channel, the more time I'm going to have to make videos. The more people that come onto this channel, the more people I can funnel into my Patreon page as well and get donations there. By the way, if you want to contribute to the channel, you can contribute directly to this channel where it says support the channel. You can also become a Patreon supporter, where you can choose what level of donation subscription you want to put every month, and you'll get something for that. All of that helps me do my job, and this is what my job is, to get these teachings out there. The more people I get onto this, the more I can do my job. So like, subscribe, support in all of those ways, and get the message out there. And comment, comment with questions. If you want me to do a Vedic reading, you can email me. If you want to work with me personally, you can email me. If you have general questions, please put those in the video. Reason being is that if you're not asking me to work with you, going to pay me to work with you, then it's better for everybody else if you put your question onto the video itself, because then I can answer your question, and then thousands of other people can get the benefit of your question and the answer. So that's why I preferred to do that. So that's it for now. I guess the main thing, if I want to leave you with one last thought, is this. Let's go back to, again, what this is all about. There's nothing outside of you that's going to give you what you seek. All the effort that you put to find something outside of you, whether it's a god or whether it's another realm of existence, you are just simply going to end up with yourself, and you'll go through the same problems in a different universe. The way to make progress in everything is to have the correct assumption. You are infinite. You are immortal. You are omnipotent. As long as you operate from that assumption, regardless of how you feel, and regardless of what is in front of you, if you operate from that assumption, eventually the universe will provide everything that you want, and eventually you will fulfill yourself to where you won't care where you are. You won't care whether you are in the body, or whether you are in the spirit, or whether you have moved on to another realm of existence. You will have a sense of fulfillment, because infinity is within you, and it is always within you, no matter where you are. Having said that, all of these tools that I'm providing for you will teach you how to increase that knowledge and that ability. So, having said that, my friends, I am going to say goodbye for now, and I look forward to our continued interaction. Thank you very much for everybody who watches, who supports. Thank you to all of my Patreon students and contributors. I can't do this without you. Thank you so much. So until next time, my friends, that's all, and may the ancestors and the gods of our ancestors be with you.